we haven't heard you on Birthright, Citizenship, so if you would like to tell us how you feel?
Well, I mean, the countries that abuse it. So the first person born, I think this year, they had a big celebrate. First American born was from China, and it was somebody who was coming here to abuse the 14th Amendment. So we have literally thousands of people coming from China, flying over here, using our facilities, probably for free, having a baby, flying back with a baby, and then saying that they can come anytime they want as guest of their child who's a US citizen who probably doesn't speak English and have any idea. Same thing happened uh, when the border was open. I think I told you that I mentioned this to our audience. I think it was around 1991 or 2. I got a knock. I was fast asleep, and I just had a rickety fence then. And I went outside and it was raining, and there was a pregnant woman there with a guy. Neither one of them spoke English, but she had a piece of paper, and it had a well-known Selma doctor, OBYGN, and it had her address and phone number, but it had the address of the Selma, and she wanted to know how to get this is before GPS, how to get to the Selma hospital. And it had her name and her address in Oaxaca, Mexico. And from the little Spanish, I used to be able to understand some. And she said that she and her husband were from, or her compatriot were, they had driven up for 2 whole days from Oaxaca. And she looked like she was gonna. I thought she was sweating and she was in pain, and she wanted to go to have this particular doctor, not just the Selma Hospital, this particular who had delivered so many children from her larger extended family and friends in Oaxaca. And that where did all that come from? It came from the 14th Amendment, which was really addressing slavery, most of the elements of that amendment. And it said that if a person has a child in the United States and is not subject to an allegiance to a foreign country, that child should be a U.S. citizen. But because of court decisions and custom and practice, we never really had um, this abuse of it like we've had. So the irony is that Mexico sends people to do that. China does it. Central America does. And none of those countries allow anybody to do it to them. And I think of the 30 or 35, 40 European countries, there's only one or two that have half. You have to have, you can have one parent, not a citizen, in other words. But otherwise, you have to have both parents as citizens before you're born. So the Trump administration is saying is this crazy because this anchor baby means that people are coming across the border with no affinity toward the United States at all, having that baby at enormous cost, 50, $100,000, and then either claiming that they have to stay here to take care of this American citizen or take them back, raise them until they get to a considerable age, 10, 12, and then they have a apply for a passport, and then they accompany them, and they're giving preference on green cards and tourist visas. And then eventually that child will sponsor them as their anchor. And it defies the logic and the spirit of the 14th Amendment. So then when you looked at the arguments, Ketanji Brown is getting a reputation as somebody who, um, I don't know how to put it. She's not able to reason logically. She just can't do it, and she talks more than any other justice. They always time how much justice. She talks probably more than all of the conservative justices put together. Clarence Thomas has more sense in his little finger than she does, but he never says much because when he says something, it's pretty good. But she talks, and she made the most ridiculous argument. She said, well, if I go to Japan as a tourist and somebody steals my wallet, then I deal with it with the Japanese legal and criminal system. So I'm pledging my allegiance to them. Do I? And so I guess if I had a child, and then she stopped. And I thought, are you going to put your head in the noose because what you're saying is if you had a child, then you think that that would be a Japanese citizen, and of course it isn't. So how is that relevant here other than to show something would be no sane country in the world would do what we're doing? And you think that anytime a person sets foot in another country and is visiting or that they have shown allegiance to that country, people come from Mexico as citizen, they are showing that allegiance to that country. And if you don't believe me, go to a soccer stadium in any major city like LA Coliseum. Every time we've had an American team versus a Mexican team, the 2 million illegal aliens of LA County root for Mexico. And when you saw the ICE demonstrations, we saw this bizarre disconnect of people burning the American flag of the country they want to stay in and proudly waving the Mexican flag. And when I go to get groceries, I'd say 1 out of every 6 cars has a Mexican flag on the window decal. And of course, there's 50 Mexican consulates in the largest number of consulates of any foreign country, and they're here for one reason, for the 30 million illegal aliens, probably 20 million of which are from Mexico. And so they have allegiance. I think they still do it. There's a soccer field about a mile away from here next to a park. And every once in a while, when they have elections in Mexico, we get candidates that come here and they have a big nighttime rally and they try to whip it up and they vote. So I think those peoples, by any normal standard, that are here illegally are legally as non-US citizens. Their allegiance is not to the United States. So when they have children here, they should not be. Does that mean that the justices are going to agree with the Trump administration? No. The justices' attitude will be this. Well, we did some controversial things. We left abortion up to the states. That was a very brave move. And we knocked the crazy guys like Judge Broadsburg and those crazy Judge Furman and all those lower district courts. But this is a bridge too far. We've gone for 150 years with this stuff, and we can't just. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. It's contrary to U.S. national interests. It's costly. But I don't want to be tarred and feathered for overturning this. We'll get every DEA group. We'll get the La Raza caucus. We'll get the Black caucus. It's just, and, you know, that's what I know that China's abusing it and everything, but, it'll not be seen that way. It'll be seen as hurting people of Hispanic heritage. So they won't do it.
You think that they'll just allow it to keep on
Yep.
going, keep on keeping
They know
on?
it's wrong. They know that no sane nation in the globe does it. The Europeans who say how left they are and how we're far right are far more right wing than we are on this.
I'm sure Mexico doesn't even
Oh,
do it.
Mexico doesn't do it,
No.
no. Well, Mexico has in their constitution, and they've kind of changed the wording to tone it down, but 20 years ago, it said that immigration shall not change the ethnic composition of the Mexican people. Think about that. We don't want any gringos coming down here who are white and don't speak Spanish because they would be a drag and they would destroy our ethnic essence. If the United States had copied the Mexican Constitution until it was slightly euphemistically changed, everybody would say we were racist. But Mexico's racist.
Yeah.
The people who are coming here say they're economic refugees. Many are from southern Mexico, but the subtext to that is they're economic refugees because Mexico is a racist country and sees them as indigenous Indians and treats them like dirt. The people in Spanish who claim that they're conquistadores and they're direct descendants from, you know, Hernan Cortez himself.
But back to the birthright issue, do you think that the Supreme Court then is just going to pass it on and basically the implication will be Congress just needs to make a law about this particular
Probably,
issue, and so
probably,
they'll just
but
kick the
there
can
was
down the
never
road?
a law, though.
No.
It was just a court interpretation decades ago that said the situation wasn't like it is now. It was a theoretical conjecture. Well, if you come here, you can. Um, it was it was for people who were freed slaves, and there was never they under the Constitution had been counted for as 3/5 of a citizen, not for races from the North, but from the South, for purposes of getting legislative congressional districts, but nobody had ever said what the status of their children was. So after the Emancipation Proclamation, the end of the Civil War, 14th Amendment, who gave them other rights, said, you know what? All they have to do is have a child, and well, extend to anybody. They'll be citizens. But they had no other allegiance to but to the United States. And
Yeah, that makes sense.